Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My Karen ex is a total freeloader, so now I'm evicting her. After that, getting my English teacher fired. And after that, if you don't have a good review, don't say anything at all. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets fleas. Oh, you've sunk to a new low, Reddit boy. So please hit that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen ex is a total freeloader, so now I'm evicting her. I was with my last girlfriend for 2 years. We started dating when she was in the process of getting evicted, so around 30 days. I have my own kid who is 5 and a 2-bedroom house, so not much room. Afterwards, she got a temporary hotel room for 2 weeks. All the while, I was sympathetic for her, but again, I don't have the room. So here it is. 6 weeks in, she's about to be homeless with her and her 2 kids, 17 male and 12 female. I eventually cave in. The girl was sharing a room with my 5-year-old son, and the 17-year-old was sleeping on my couch under the assumption he would move out when he turned 18 in 3 months. Well, here we are almost 2 years later, and the 18-year-old is still sleeping on the couch. No job, messing my house up, ashes from his cigarettes everywhere. It didn't work out and we broke up. Now I did what I had to do. I put a 30-day notice on them to vacate. Now they are in the same pickle. She's living in a camper and still hasn't gotten her stuff out of my house. Her kids are crying when they get their stuff. I told her time and time again I had to do it, or you could just live here forever rent-free. Keep in mind, the reason we didn't work out was her spending holidays with her ex instead of us because it was family. I feel like crap. Getting my English teacher fired. So this happened when I was in the 10th grade. The cast, we've got Mr. Awesome, we've got Karen, we've got Marie, and Simon. You gotta know this story takes place in Germany. We have 4 kinds of high schools here. Students who are in the kind that I went to would usually only go to the 9th grade, but they can go into the 10th grade if they want a higher education. I was one of those students. Until that year, I had the best English teacher. He was kind, cared for his students, would always speak English with us, and so on. I loved his lessons. English was my favorite subject until the 10th grade started. He was still my class teacher, but the class got split for English and math. The good students would go into the E course, the bad into the G course. I was terrible at math, but quite good in English, so you can guess where I landed. Sadly, Mr. Awesome, my favorite teacher, got to lecture the G course, and Marie and I got into the E course, taught by Karen. The first day we had her, we were already annoyed. She was terrible in English. You think mine is bad? She couldn't even spell words we had learned in elementary school. I won't even talk about her pronunciation. When she tried to say the word the, it was z, and we hated it. It wasn't that bad though, but we were thinking our part and just did our best. But her personality, that was what made us want revenge. Every month we'd get our grades. I don't know how it is in other countries, but here you get 2 grades. One for every test you take, and one for how much you say and do in class and how right it was. And when she told me my grades for what I did in class, I was shocked. I got a 5. You could say that's an E. Marie got a 4, or a D. Some other students got terrible grades too. I'd always get the right answers, would be done first with everything, and all in all, I was a model student. My only competition was Marie, but we both got terrible grades. Simon, another classmate with which we got along with pretty well, got a 2, a B, even though he never did anything. He's always been on his phone, or he'd be talking with other students. Even he himself said it wasn't fair. We and the other students were complaining to Karen, but she only said, "Stop being such smarty pants. I am the teacher, and you are the students. If you have problems with that, you can always go into the G course." Well knowing that we couldn't, we needed to be in the better course to get the better graduation. Marie and I went to Mr. Awesome since we knew him very well, and he knew that we were the great students, so we told him everything. He sighed and scratched his head. "I'm sorry. I know how much this means to you two, but my hands are tied. I think that you're in the right, I really do. But if I talk to her, I have the feeling that it could get worse for you. Just do your best," he said, quite sad that he couldn't help us. The next months, we'd go along with it, until we had our first test. When we got it back, I went pale. My first 6, F, I had ever had in English. Marie and the same students that had problems before had bad grades too. It was all digital, so you couldn't see, but we knew that she did something to the tests. We immediately went to the principal, but he didn't believe us. Only Mr. Awesome did, but again, his hands were tied. Finally, we had enough. All of us made a chat and tried to figure a way to get revenge, and we had a plan. She'd often get very aggressive, and we knew that. That morning, we asked Mr. Awesome to open our class door since Karen was late again. We used all the time we had. Simon placed a small camera on the cupboard and turned it on. When Karen came in, everyone sat down and was quiet. She started the class and asked the first question. No one answered. She was confused but went on. No one answered anything, so she got angrier every minute. A few minutes later, she yelled at us again. Everyone was looking at her silently, and she was going on screaming. When she said we were the worst class that she had ever had, the most quietest, shyest, and biggest teacher pet opened her mouth. Maybe if you'd be a better teacher, everyone else would be better students. Everyone laughed and agreed. One of the boys screamed, "Yo!" as the clown he was. Karen was livid. She walks to the quiet kid, my hero, and slammed her ruler on her hand. She immediately started crying, holding out her hand. Karen realized what she had done and tried to talk herself out of it, while Marie, Simon, and I took the cam, comforted the girl, and went out without her saying a single word to Karen. We went to Mr. Austin first and told him what happened. He comforted the girl as well and went to the principal with us. We showed him everything. You think that's good? It gets better. They literally found illegal meds in her bag, all kinds. She got arrested and she lost all rights to teach. Plus, the quiet kid pressed charges and got 300 euros from her. She gave all of us an ice for this. We got a better teacher then. I went from a low-grade student to the class best. Why do I tell this story now? Marie and I met Karen today in the city. She was an addict and had a lot of problems back then, but she's better now. She went to therapy and got help. She's sorry for everything and wished us well when we said goodbye. If you don't have a good review, don't say anything at all. This happened years and years ago when my school had taken us on a 2-day field trip to a hill station close to the city. All of us on the trip were kids who were in the 6th to 8th grade. The trip was a blast and everyone had fun. The event happened just before we were supposed to leave. So our school had a weird policy where after every field trip, they would gather all the students in one room and pick out a random group of students and ask them to say a couple of sentences about the venue and experience, whatever. 5 of us were chosen for it at this time and were asked to wait in an adjacent room and come out one by one. It was all cool till the first girl went up to the mic and said, "The experience was nice, but I felt that the food that was served was stale. I think a few people got sick." As soon as she finished speaking, the vice principal flew into a rage as she descended on this poor girl and started screaming. "Who do you think you are? These guys have been working super hard for us all weekend. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all." Now, her reaction might not make sense, but the hotel we were staying at belonged to some relative of hers, which is probably why we were there in the first place, and she felt some type of way about it. That girl almost started crying as she came back to us. I was next up, so I was standing and waiting, but the VP went on a long rant about being well-behaved and setting a good example. I think at this point it's worth talking about one of the other kids chosen to do this pointless exercise. He was an older kid in the 8th grade, and he had an accident on the trip, so his arm was slinged up. The accident was, I think, caused partly by negligence from the hotel staff. I'm blanking on the details right now, and he was fully prepared to talk about it. So this tantrum made him especially upset, especially because the same VP had refused to send him home early from the trip because it would cost too much. He told us this later. This guy holds my arm and tells me, "Hey, she said don't say anything if it's not good, so don't say anything." So I went out, stood there for a few seconds, said, "I don't have anything to say," and came back. The kids who went after me did the same. This guy went last. He goes up to the mic, and at this point, VP is shouting again, "Did you do this? Don't you dare say nothing," or something of this sort. He says, "I loved being here. Glad that I was able to be here, even after I hurt my arm. I will be really sad now that I have to go back to my parents and an actual doctor." The vice principal lost her crap at that. Most of the kids were too young to understand sarcasm, but they definitely did start laughing at her. She threatened to suspend and fine everyone there, and she delayed the buses back to our town by 2 hours as punishment. A few days later, they called my parents in for a disciplinary hearing, and the VP started narrating the story to them. When she got to the point about the complaint from the first girl, my dad said, "Wait, so the hotel was serving stale food?" I think the VP kinda got shook by that bit because I was asked to go back to class shortly after, and nothing else came of it. Edit. I've been seeing a lot of comments generally to the tune of, "How can she do this with no repercussions?" So, I'm from India, and schooling culture in the country is very disciplinarian in nature. Most teachers and parents would agree that kids need to be put in their place and all that good stuff. Edit 2. As I'm remembering some more details slowly, I'm not sure if the older kid for sure had a broken arm, but I just remember it being in a weird sling, and he was wearing some sort of a wrist brace. There were smaller clinics in the area, so he may not have been completely neglected in terms of immediate medical attention. Am I the jerk for not taking my brother's kids to Disneyland with me? Long backstory. My brother and I have had a strained relationship our whole lives. We had a very rough upbringing. Our mom was amazing, but our dad was the opposite. When I was 17, I moved out of state and had very little contact with anyone outside of my mom. My mom ended up being diagnosed with cancer and fought really hard for 8 years. I would fly in to visit her every few months as I could. I ended up married to a horrible man. He ended up having a heart attack and had to have a quad bypass. He was a pain to care for and just got more and more mean. 3 months after his heart attack, my mom's health turned for the worse and she passed. Our dad was a jerk to us, going as far as to try to sue us for some money our mom left us. After the funeral, my husband became more and more mean to me, and I took the money she had left me and filed for divorce. I decided I needed some me time, so I decided to go spend some time at Disneyland and visiting family in the area. My brother told me I was stupid for getting a hotel, and I should stay with him and his family. He has 2 girls, 5 and 8, that I have only met twice. When I get there, I was shocked that him and his wife were planning to go to work and leave the kids with me. I am not good with kids. I don't dislike them, I just am uncomfortable being responsible for them. The entire family knows this very well. I've been like that since I was a kid. I am happily child-free. I told him I wasn't there to be daycare for his kids. He got upset because he had already told our aunt she didn't need to watch them that week. I was irritated that he hadn't even asked me about this. I told him that I wasn't planning on being available to sit at his house watching his kids while they worked, and reminded him I was planning to spend a few days at the park, which is a few hours away. I may be bad with kids, but I know better than to even mention Disneyland around them. Later that night, he tells me it's stupid to pay for a hotel by the park. I should just drive up for the day, then I can take the girls. Without missing a beat, he asks them if they would want to go spend the day with their aunt at Disneyland. The response is what you would expect. I was floored. I told them I had to go home and I couldn't go. I grabbed my stuff and drove up and found a hotel close to the park. I spent 4 days bouncing between parks, ordering room service, going to the pool, spa, and bar, and a few times just drowned my sorrows alone in the hotel room. My phone blew up with family, who I haven't been close to in over a decade, telling me how awful I was and how much I had upset the girls, my brother and his wife, that they were all grieving too, and I was being selfish. So, am I the jerk for not taking them with me? Am I the jerk for not sharing my bank account? I, 29 female, have been with my fiance, 30 male, who I'll call D, for 10 years. We're supposed to get married in the fall. We don't currently live together, and last week we met with a financial advisor. I've been working with him for 6 years personally. My fiance has never spoken to anyone about finances, so we picked him, as I trust him already, to talk about combining assets as we plan on completely sharing finances. I was worried I'd be bringing very little to the table. I finished my specialized training last year, so I've either been a full-time student with no actual income or making a very small salary that hardly covered my bills since high school. I basically have my car and minimal savings, but I have paid off all of my debt. I currently make about 75% of D's income. D's been working for the last 6 years in a very well-paying job, so I figured he'd have more assets. His finances were so terrible, my advisor actually called to speak to me after our meeting to tell me to keep my finances separate from D's. The reason is that D is essentially supporting 7 other adults, his parents and 5 siblings. 4 are adults. His parents had 7 kids and can't support them on 1 minimum wage income. They had a lot of government aid, but now that the kids are adults, that's stopped. I know D helped out when his siblings were younger. I thought it was admirable that he was willing to help ensure his siblings had a decent home to live in. Now that they're all grown, I don't agree with continuing to help like he is. And honestly, now seeing what he actually paid, I think it's always been way too much. In the last 3 months, he spent over $15,000 on them for things like repairing the roof, putting in an AC unit. AC is not standard or necessary where we live. Heat is. And then paying for them to run it, etc. I am floored. I told him I wasn't comfortable sharing bank accounts anymore. I tried to be diplomatic, but instead it turned into a fight. He was angry that I don't want to help those in need and only my family. I gave my brother all my savings, $5,000, last year when he fell on hard times, but he's paid me back almost $3,000. I wouldn't mind helping his family occasionally, or if they use the help to try to turn things around. My family can give and take. I gave my brother money because I knew he was going to put it to good use. D's family just takes, spends, and asks for more. I'm worried if we share accounts, then D will start giving my money away too. I told him the only way I can see this working is if we keep things separate. We split bills equally and control our own spending money, though I worry how this would work with kids. I just don't want our family to suffer for his family's mistakes. D is calling me the jerk, as his family and some friends, D went around telling our friends about how I'm a hypocrite and don't trust him. Edit. Thank you for all the support and advice, everyone. It is appreciated. D ended up seeing this post and it forced my hand a little earlier than I was prepared for. But we talked and argued, but ultimately, we're done. He admitted to hiding this from me because he knew I'd be upset and want him to go back to counseling. I didn't realize he stopped therapy last year. He never said he was still going, but he did imply it a number of times and admitted to hiding that too. He has a lot of baggage. His parents did serious damage to him, and while he really has done an amazing job of getting out of that situation and breaking the cycle, he's got a lot of baggage. And unfortunately, that baggage is not something I'm willing to carry because I just can't trust him anymore after this massive lie. He feels responsible for his siblings struggling so much, and while he hasn't said it, I think he wants his parents' approval too. He knows it's not healthy what he's doing, but he also admitted he doesn't really want to stop because, again, he feels like he owes it to help his family since he's the only one who's done well. He doesn't think a family needs a big house, an apartment is fine, or that kids need extra activities like piano or dance lessons. He thinks we would be fine basically living off my salary, and we would, but it won't be the life that I want, and I don't think I'll ever trust him again. And I don't want that kind of marriage. It breaks my heart, but I need to leave for my own sanity. Am I the jerk for not wanting to donate to my former roommate's missionary fund? In college, I had 2 very devout Catholic roommates. I wouldn't consider myself overly religious, but we all got along pretty well. And while there were occasionally spirited discussions about religion and Catholicism in our apartment, nobody tried to shove anything down anyone's throat, and we all stayed friends throughout college. One of my roommates, James, became a fairly close friend. We sometimes spent the occasional Saturday night having those good old deep discussions about the meaning of life, and it was nice. I ended up telling him things about me that I've never told anyone. And then, after graduation, he basically cut off all contact with me. My texts would get, at maximum, 1 reply or none at all. He was always too busy to talk on the phone and catch up. It really made me sad because I thought I had found a good friend for once. That was about 1.5 years ago. Since then, I've gotten a fancy consulting job in a large city, and he's a missionary for his church. Yesterday, out of the blue, I got a text from James asking if I wanted to catch up on the phone sometime. I was taken aback and surprised he reached out to me, but figured, hey, why not? Maybe he'll apologize for basically ghosting me for over 1 year. When we talked, we spent about 35 minutes chatting about our lives and catching up. He had gotten engaged and married. Toward the end of the call, he says, "So man, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was because I wanted to ask if you would consider supporting my work as a missionary. Maybe we could also stay in touch too." I didn't want to make this call awkward, so I just told him I'd think about it. On the inside, I was fuming. Not because I didn't support his work as a missionary. I honestly admired him for it in college when he was considering it. Being a missionary is a really hard job. But wow, he ghosted me for 1.5 years, gets married, doesn't tell me, pretends to want to catch up with me, then proceeds to ask me for money? I'm honestly considering writing him a text saying how long it's been since I've heard from him. And where he gets the gall to ask me for money after basically cutting me out of his life. Am I the jerk for thinking this way? Or is there some unspoken rule about being nice when former college friends ask you to donate to a cause they support? Edit. Appreciate everyone taking the time to comment. I figured I was in the right here, but navigating interpersonal conflicts has never been a strong point of mine. I've decided to just block him and move on with my life. People like James are the reason why I have such huge trust issues when it comes to making friends. Back to square one. Sorry for attempting to make something more convenient and cheaper for you. Happened today, and I'm honestly still just confused more than anything. I work in wireless. A customer comes in talking about a free tablet promotion we are running and says that she spoke with a care rep on the phone and they told her to just go to a store. Okay, no problem, and thanks for the sale and commission. Was it that easy? Of course not. The customer doesn't have my company as her wireless provider and was just looking for the tablet to be free. I explained that having a tablet with unlimited data on an account without a voice line makes the tablet line unnecessarily expensive and ask her who her wireless provider is for her voice line. She tells me, then says she likes it because it's only $30 a month. Okay, yeah, that's nice and cheap. I explained that the tablet line by itself would be $70 a month, but if she brought over her voice line and put it on the same account as her tablet line with us, combined, the account would be as low as $90 a month for both, saving the customer $10 a month and making it so that she only has to pay one bill for both instead of two. Convenient and saves money, so I thought the customer would at least be receptive of the idea. I was very wrong. At this point, she begins verbally berating me, yelling at me and telling me that I'm being rude trying to sell her something she didn't come in for, letting me know if I continue speaking to her that way, she would file a formal complaint against me. Okay. Before I could speak again, she cut me off and said she also didn't appreciate how I was conducting myself and motioning around with my hands. I tend to be a bit animated when I talk about anything. It's just the way I am. It honestly took every ounce of willpower I had not to snap back at her with, "I'm sorry my inadvertent muscle tics makes you uncomfortable." I don't have an actual tic, but she was being a real jerk. But being the good little retail employee I am, I just excused myself from the interaction and had my coworker finish the interaction. Did we close the sale? Of course not, because she felt we were attempting to swindle her and have her do something she didn't want to do, as if I was twisting her arm to bring over her voice line. I merely suggested it was a way to both save her money and make her billing be more convenient. I'm sorry for that, I guess. People are wild. Am I the jerk for following my doctor's advice and not my mother's? I, 29 female, have returned home in the last 24 hours from an unexpected hospital stay. I have some chronic issues, which means that checkups at hospitals are nothing new to me. Nothing for anyone to take serious note of, but this time, however, was different. This was no checkup. A visit to the emergency room resulted in a hospital stay of almost a week, in which I was hooked up to various IVs and 2 surgeries, one which involved placing a stent in my body. This will have to be removed in 2 weeks. Now, I live across the road from my parents. We do our grocery shopping together. So it came as a little bit of a surprise that there were no visits, phone calls, check-ins to see how I was doing. I wasn't alone. I have a lovely partner who visited me every day, who helped me at mealtimes or aided me walking to the bathroom while connected to everything, which is not an easy thing to do. The moment that the boat was well and truly rocked was when I called my mom, because my sister mentioned they had dropped off a window blind that sister had picked up for me while I had been hospitalized. I called because mom had let herself in and began to clean. Not exactly clean, more give a very colorful description to how messy and diabolical my house was. Neither me nor my wife are messy people, and considering she was going work hospital bed, it wasn't the end of the world if there was a little bit of untidiness. It's just us, and we are clean but kind to ourselves. Upon informing my mother that I had been told by the doctor who performed the main surgery that I should stay on bed rest for the next 2 weeks until removal, she became livid with me. Declared there was nothing wrong with me. I absolutely couldn't just spend 2 weeks laying around in bed doing nothing other than being lazy. The conversation then ebbed and flowed, but stayed roughly in the same place, with the same level of anger. She was angry that I wasn't listening to what she was telling me to do. I was confounded that she wanted me to ignore medical advice and listen to her. The final note of this was her texting me to let me know that I had been selfish and I should have thought about her and all she was doing for me. I tried to be as calm and polite as I could to say that I had just had surgery, just been very scared in the hospital, alone most of the time, and I didn't think I was being selfish. I thought I was taking care of myself. And with that, she asked my sister to work as a middleman and let me know that neither she nor my father want anything to do with me anymore. They do not want to talk to me, speak to me, or hear from me. They're cutting ties, and I only have my own attitude and behavior to thank for this. I am naturally upset, confused, trying to process all of this while very much dealing with recovery from the hospital. Did I approach this all wrong? Should I be trying to apologize? Am I the jerk? Am I the jerk for threatening to have law enforcement remove a patient's mother from the room? The ambulance station I work at received a 911 call yesterday, and upon looking at the call notes, it was apparent that the patient might be having a serious medical issue and possibly need a trip to the ER. Upon arriving on scene, we were greeted by the patient's parents, who didn't seem very concerned about their kid's condition. In fact, the patient's dad didn't get up from the sofa for the entire time we were there. They just stated that the patient is acting strangely. The next thing said to us was a comment from the patient's mother about how tall I was. I'm 6'8". I just smiled and asked where the patient was. We were taken to the patient's room and began our assessment. For a standard EMS assessment, several things have to be done quickly, including asking the patient several questions. This can help us determine their mental state, medical history, and the events leading up to 911 being called. I didn't even get done with my first question before the patient's mother asked, "How tall are you?" I answered her and then tried to begin my assessment again. Again, I was interrupted, this time by a comment about a friend of the patient's mother that is the same height. Maintaining my professional demeanor, I told the patient's mother that I needed to ask her kid some questions, implying that she needs to stop interrupting me. This worked for all of 30 seconds before the patient's mother started again, this time asking how much I weigh. I chose to ignore her in hopes that she would get the hint. She did not and continued to interrupt me. I told the patient's mother, in a respectful but stern manner, that this wasn't the time to be interrupting me. The longer that this takes, the longer it will be until your kid gets to the ER. I reminded her that her kid's health should interest her more than my height. This made her irate, and I was immediately threatened with having a complaint filed against me. I told her she was welcome to do so and gave her my supervisor's number, only asking that she do so in another room. This made her angrier as she went on a rant about how, "You can't tell me what room I can or cannot be inside of in my own house." Enough was enough, and I told the patient's mother that I would have law enforcement remove her from my scene if she did not stop delaying the patient's care. This put an end to her rant, at which I was able to finish my assessment and transport the patient to the hospital, where fortunately it was determined that they were not having a serious medical crisis. I did end up getting a complaint filed against me and was questioned by my supervisor about the incident. No disciplinary action was taken against me, but I was given a reminder to maintain my professionalism when on scene and to not use law enforcement as a threat unless absolutely necessary. Am I the jerk for my reaction when my date asked me to complain to the waiter for him? This happened last night. It's honestly not that big of a deal because I'm definitely not seeing this guy again, but I was curious to see what people thought and wanted to try to use this sub after following the Twitter account for it. Okay, so I've been seeing this guy for a bit. We've only gone on a couple of dates and it was going well so far. Last night, we went out to eat, and when we got the food, he told me the side wasn't the one he had ordered. I said that this sucked and told him that I'd flag down our waiter if I caught his eye. The guy asked me, very politely I will say, if I would tell the waiter what the problem was. I genuinely thought he was kidding because it was so ridiculous, so I laughed. He looked a little uncomfortable, and I realized he wasn't kidding, and I asked him if he was serious. He said that he has anxiety and that his ex used to take care of things like that. I told him I'm not his mom, and that if he has a problem, he can speak up for himself. He got annoyed and was all, "It's not that big of a deal anyway," and that he'll just eat it. I was so confused here. I asked him if he was really going to eat something that he didn't order just because I wouldn't complain to the waiter for him, and he insisted that it was fine and not worth it. Obviously, the rest of the date was super awkward. We went Dutch on the bill, and I'll probably never speak to this guy again. I have anxiety sometimes too, but if I order something and it's wrong, I'd ask to have it fixed and would never push that on to someone else to do. But I told my roommate after I got back last night, and she said I might have been a bit too harsh. I don't necessarily think I was, but I wanted to ask this sub. Please don't roast me. Thanks. Update. I'm fine being labeled as the jerk here. I know my bluntness can rub some people the wrong way. I want a more independent partner, and he wants to be babied. And I know people are going to have a problem with this word choice, but I don't care. It fits. Nothing wrong with either of those things. Me not wanting that doesn't make me a bad person or whatever, and it doesn't make him a jerk. Just another bad date story. What do you think? Is OP the jerk for how she handled this or not? Please let us know. I wouldn't mind complaining for you, Reddit boy. Tell him to find himself a Karen and he'll be set. Click this button to join as a member today and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. And come watch this video next. You won't believe what happens in it.